For the challenge this week, we're looking at a hotel and all the rooms that it has in and all the different features of those rooms, and then comparing that with guests. So, what requirements do guests have? How can we best match those guests to those rooms? So, let's start off with the guests input here. So we've got our party names, how many adults and children are in that party, whether they want a double or twin bed, whether they have accessibility needs, and any additional requests that they have. So we're going to first of all focus on counting how many of these requests each guest has. So to do that, we're going to split these up, pivot them, and aggregate to count. That's how we'll do that. So to split those guests up, those requests up, sorry. First of all, we're going to replace those NA values with null. So the easy way to do that is click on the value, and then if I go to one that isn't a null already, I can just use the replace with null function here at the top. So that's what I did for those n/a values, to replace them with nulls. Next up, I went to the menu here to go to split values. I did a custom split on a comma so that we get these 3 additional columns. Now I've replaced also these blanks with nulls in the next step. So just click on one of those blanks and go to replace with null just to make the filtering easier later. Okay, so then we pivot that. I'm doing a wildcard pivot here, so it picks up any column header that has a dash in it, so all those split ones, so that we just get this pivoted column here of all the additional requests there. I'm going to keep the pivot one names as well because that tells me how many requests have been made once we filter out these nulls and blanks. But it's not just as simple here as clicking on a null and filtering it out, because we don't want to get rid of all those null additional requests. We want to make sure they're still in the data. So our filter is a little bit more complicated. As I was saying, this step is just doing that group and replace, so those blanks get grouped in as nulls. And then our filter is looking like, so if our additional requests is null, so there's no additional requests, we want to keep all of those. And then we have an or here, so then for all the other additional requests, we want our additional request split, so that single column of all those requests to be non-null. So that's the not is null that we have there. Okay, so we've done that filtering, and now all we have left, all these nulls are just relating to those null additional requests. Our other additional requests, they're either bath, high floor, or not near to a lift. And we can see these numbers now correspond with how many additional requests each guest has made. So we'll just clean that up a little bit, do a little bit of renaming here. So we've renamed our pivot one names to be number of requests. Removed all the letters from there, removed all the dashes from there as well, and all the spaces. Just using that menu here, so cleaning, removing the letters, removing the punctuation, removing the spaces, and then we rename that to be number of requests. Okay, so we aggregate this, so we're just grouping by everything apart from our field that we pivoted, so that we get back to having 30 rows for those 30 customers or guests, whatever you want to call them. And we take the max number of requests there as well, rather than aggregating to a group by, so that we know how many requests each customer has made. And then we just need to deal with the fact that obviously all the nulls will have 1 request at the moment, but actually they should have 0 requests. So we'll just update that quickly. So we're just writing this calculator field to say if that is null, the additional request, so this field here, then make that a 0, otherwise keep it as it is. Okay. So quite a few steps just to count the number of requests. I'd love to see simpler methods, so looking forward to that. Before we join it onto our hotel rooms, we're just making sure that if we see in our view here, we've got the room, the number of adults, number of children, and the features of that hotel room. We just want to replace this value with a 0 so that when we're joining it, it is a numeric value. So we just basically, again, I just double clicked into here to change to be a 0. Okay. So now for that join, where we want basically our hotel rooms, that's got to be our upper bound for seeing how many adults and how many children can fit into the room. So basically that means that this left-hand side has to be greater than or equal to the right-hand side. So that if there's 3 adults, for example, in this room, then there can't only be 2 adults available in this room capacity-wise. Okay, so we just do a quick rename to rename this adults-1 and children-1 here. So name that to be adults in party and children in party, just so we can distinguish between the actual guest details and the room details. And then we'll start filtering. So for our double and twin, then our filter is quite simple. We're saying contains the features of the room, the word double or the word twin. And it'll only keep those where those are matching. So we've already broken down to fewer rows here. Similarly, for all those guests that have accessibility requirements, we want to make sure that the room features are accessible. So let's see the filter behind that. So we've got an or filter here. So we're saying requires accessible room equals no. Or if it does require an accessible room, then the features must also contain the word accessible. Okay, and that has removed some of that. So let's just check if that's worked. So all of our guests who require accessibility, these are all yeses. And all of these rooms, 101, 102, 103, 104, all have accessible in their features. Good, so the only rooms that they have available to them are rooms that are going to meet their requirements, which is great. Now we're looking, so we've done the kind of hard rules of what rooms we have to have matching. Now let's think about how can we satisfy their additional requests to the highest possible level. So I'm going to create 3 additional fields now. So if I'm looking at my additional requests here, then I'm going to create these 3 different columns. So bath, high floor, and not near lift. So I'm saying for the bath, if my additional requests contains the word bath and the features contain the word bath, then that gets a 1. Otherwise, that'll get a 0. So if the guest wants a bath and the room doesn't have a bath, that'll get a 0. If the guest doesn't want a bath, even if the room contains a bath, that'll still be a 0 because that isn't a requirement that the guest wants to be fulfilled. Similarly with the high floor, exactly the same premise there, just with high floor instead of bath. Whereas the not near to a lift is a little more complicated because we want to check if our features contains the words near to lift, then we want that to be not near to the lift. Okay, and then our additional request containing not near to the lift. So just slightly different in the logic there. Rather than checking if it is near to the lift, we want it not to be near to the lift. Okay. Okay, so we get that there too. Now with that, we can then sum up these fields to see how many of those additional requests are being satisfied for each room. So bath plus high floor plus not near to lift. And then we can start checking our request satisfaction percentage. So basically, if they don't have any additional requests, then 100% are being satisfied. So we start off with that. Otherwise, we want to have our additional requests satisfied over the number of requests, and we're just rounding that to 0 decimal places and multiplying it by 100 so it looks like a percentage. So, okay, we can see here, for example, 50% of the requests are being satisfied for these customers, but in a lot of cases, 100% of those requests are being satisfied. So we want to check for each party what is the maximum satisfaction request satisfaction. So we're just doing a fixed LOD, grouping by the party, doing the max request satisfaction. I don't know why the interface there isn't loading very well, but we know that it's working there. So in most cases, in 99% of cases, all of the requests can be satisfied by at least one room. But for this particular guest, they have accessibility needs and they want a bath, but none of the rooms have baths that are accessible. So that's a valuable piece of information to feed back to management as well, that they should have some baths in the accessible rooms as well. Okay, so then we do our filter to say that we want our most suitable room, which is that LOD we just did, to equal the request satisfaction, just to filter that down again a little bit more. So now every guest has the most suitable rooms for them assigned. Well, not assigned, they've got multiple different options there, but you know what I mean. Finally, our final thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that these rooms that have the higher capacity, so that can fit in 4 adults, if we look at some of those examples there, we can see that not all of the guests that are suggested for those rooms have 3 or more adults, so they could fit in any room basically. So particularly this adult here who's just a single traveller, they're being matched up with one of our higher capacity rooms, how can we remove that from the equation? So the filter that we're going to do here is we're going to, first of all, do another fixed LOD. The interface is working this time. This time we're grouping by the room and we want to know the maximum number of adults in the party. So for all those where it's at 2, for those higher floors, we want to basically filter those out. So if we see here, we're saying either we want to keep all of the cases where the number of adults is less than 3, or if it's greater than 3, then we only want to keep those where the most adults in the room here is equal to the adults in the party. So equal to this field here. Okay, and that helps us to filter down so that now when we click on those higher capacity rooms, we can see that the adults in party are all greater than 2 now. So that helps as well with assigning and making sure that we have it's easier to assign the correct guest to the correct room. Okay, and that's it for this challenge. That's our final solution where we have those 217 rows. I hope you enjoyed this challenge. I certainly enjoyed coming up with it, so thanks very much for watching.